This is in Numbers chapter 13. We're going to be reading about Caleb and Joshua. And I'm just going to go ahead and read Numbers 13. I'm reading from King James. If you guys have different versions, it might not be exactly the same. But I don't want to just take little snippets. So we're just going to read the whole chapter. So it says in Numbers 13:1, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send men that they may search for the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers will you send a man, every one a ruler among them. Now there's 12 tribes in Israel, so that's 12 men. And Moses, by the commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran. All those men were heads of the children of Israel. And these were their names: of the tribe of Reuben, Shemua, the son of Zachar; of the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, the son of Hori. And I'm probably going to mess up these, so we'll cut all of this from the video, okay? Of the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. Jephunneh. Of the tribe of Issachar, Egal, the son of Joseph. Of the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun. Of the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, the son of Raphu. Of the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel, the son of Sodi. Of the tribe of Joseph, namely of the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, the son of Susi. Of the tribe of Dan, Amiel, the son of Gamali. Of the tribe of Asher, Sethur, the son of Michael. Of the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, the son of Vosai. Of the tribe of Gad, Gul, the son of Machi. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Oshea, the son of Nun, Jehoshua, which is Joshua. Okay? So these are the 12 people. 2 names we're going to remember. The rest of them I'm just going to forget instantly. And that's going to be Joshua and Caleb. Okay? And Moses sent them out to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwell therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds. And what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether it be wood therein or not, and be of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was at the time of the first ripe grapes. So he's basically sending out 12 people to go into the land of Canaan, the promised land where they came from, where Abraham had settled before they had gone into captivity in Egypt. And so now Moses had brought them out of Egypt. They were in the wilderness, and where we would be like the Sinai Peninsula or Saudi Arabia right now. And they were trying to go to the promised land, but he wanted them to see what was there first. And so in verse 21, so they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rehob, as men came to Hamath. Bless you. And they ascended by the south and came unto Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with 1 cluster of grapes, and they bare it between 2 upon a staff. And they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. So they took a whole cluster of grapes, and it said they bore it between 2 men on a staff. It's a pretty big cluster of grapes, right? To have 2 men carry this thing. The place was called the brook of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from there. And they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. In verse 26, and they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him and said, We came unto the land where ye had sent us, and surely it flows with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people are strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went up with him said, We will not be able to go up against these people, for they are stronger than we are. And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw giants, the son of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So that's Numbers chapter 13. All right. And so what we're going to discuss today, and we're going to go into 14 a little, so just keep your Bibles ready here. But the people that were there were afraid of the people in the land. There were 12 men sent out to spy the land. Caleb and Joshua, and then the other guys I told you to forget their names. And there's a reason I told you to forget their names, because they're cowards. We don't remember cowards' names. Okay? So in Numbers 13:2, God told Moses to send out men to spy the land of Canaan, which he was giving to the people of Israel. They're going to check on its fruitfulness to see what was there, how the fortifications were, what the enemies looked like. They were doing recon for the Israelites before they just went in and attacked. Okay? They saw a fertile land with grapes so large they had to be carried by 2 men. They saw fortified cities inhabited by giants. Of the 12 men or spies who came back, 10 of them gave a report that it wasn't worth taking. They said that the place ate up the inhabitants of it, and that there were great men, giants, and fortifications. And it started this fear and rebellion to start within the Israelites. 2 of the men, Joshua and Caleb, gave a different report. In verse 30, Caleb said, Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. So his response wasn't to be afraid and wasn't to abandon their duty, but to say, hey, let's go. We can handle this. Caleb was not intimidated by the enemy. He saw the same thing that everyone else had seen, right? He saw the fortifications, he saw the giants, and he interpreted it through faith rather than fear. And that's going to be the primary part of our lesson here, is to view things through faith instead of through fear. Of the 10 people, or the 10 men who gave a negative report, it caused murmuring and fear to go through the tribes of Israel. It led the people into despair. They had just left Egypt, okay, and they were going through the wilderness. They had received the law from the Lord, and now they were going into the promised land. This wasn't a long time. This was, a short period of time, okay? The spies themselves were there for 40 days and came back. So they haven't been in the wilderness for 40 years at this point. They just left Egypt. But instead of trusting God, the people, when they heard the negative report, started to have fear. And they said in we'll read on. So if you go to chapter 14, verse 1, And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, Would God that he had died in the land of Egypt, that we had died in the land of Egypt. Or would God that we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore has God brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, Let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spoke to the company of the children of Israel, saying, The land which we passed through to search it is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only rebel you not against the Lord, neither fear you the people of the land, for they are bread for us. The defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. But all the congregation bade to stone these two men with stones. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people provoke me? And how long will it be ere they believe me? For all the signs which I have showed them, I will smite them with pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. And Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear it, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land, for they have heard that you are God among these people, and that you, Lord, art seen face to face, and that the cloud standeth over them, and that you go before them by daytime in a pillar of cloud, and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if you shall kill all these people as one man, then the nations which have heard the name of thee will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring his people into the land which we swore to them, therefore he has slain them in the wilderness. And now I beseech thee, let the power of my Lord be great, according as thou hast spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of thy mercy, as thou hast forgiven his people from Egypt until now. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to your word. But as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Because all those men which had seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swore to their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoke me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwelt in the valley. Tomorrow turn you and get you to the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. So we're going to stop there for a moment. So what we were reading here is that the people were grumbling and murmuring and moaning, basically, just because they heard a report of the land that they were supposed to take having giants in it and having great fortifications. And so their response to that is, it's better for us to be in Egypt. We should just go ahead and go back to Egypt now. If you guys don't remember, Egypt was bondage for the Israelites. They were slaves in that land. But as slaves, they were fed, I assume. They didn't have to worry about being overtaken by other armies. And so they were content, more content to be slaves than to get what God had promised them. Right? And so their fear overcame them when they started to think about the fact that, hey, maybe they would be killed in battle, and maybe their families would be taken into this land of giants. And so God got very frustrated with these people. And Joshua and Caleb were like, hey, stop talking this way. God will deliver us. Let's go. Let's go into battle. In verse 8 of chapter 14, it said, if the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. And then he says in verse 9, don't rebel against the Lord, neither fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. That's a powerful statement. They have no defense. Let's go get them. God's with us. He's not with them. He's taken down their defense. We just need to go and take it. And then what was the people of Israel's response? Let's stone this guy for talking this way, for trying to get us to get off our butts and get into war. And so God said, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of these people altogether. I'll make a new people. And Moses was like, no, please don't do that, But the point of that is to say that, the people had a spirit of fear. So the 10 spies, when they gave their report, the people of Israel started to be fearful. They said, it's better that we had died in the land of Egypt or that we had died in this wilderness than to just go to take the land that God had given them. These are people who had witnessed the Red Sea part before their very eyes, who saw Pharaoh's men drown in that same sea as they passed through. This is the same people who had gotten water from a rock when Moses struck it. They doubted. And it repeats through Scripture. And even in our lives today, this same thing will repeat. How quickly we all forget what God has done for us when the next obstacle comes. And so this is a bit of a rebuke for each one of us, okay? That when you think back of all the amazing things that God has done for you, and then we're worried because this bit of news came in. Like, He just took us through the wilderness. He brought us out of captivity. He saved our soul. And yet we don't think He can help us with this next thing in our journey. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for God, and it's frustrating for us when we're not walking in His will. Okay? We get to the point where we just are consumed by fear. So we should be like Joshua and Caleb and don't fear the people of the land. Don't fear what is on the other side of that walkway, because that is our promised land. Right? We will be able to overcome it. Why? Not because of our strength, but what did He said? What did He say? God is for us, right? They have no defense because God is with us. I'm going to skip over to 2 Kings now. It's going to be chapter 6. So 2 Kings chapter 6. We're going to talk a little bit about Elisha. Now, this is not to distract or take us away from Caleb, but just to add some extra insight into what Joshua is saying here. So 2 Kings chapter 6. We're going to start in verse 13. Let me know when you guys are there. So 2 Kings 6:13. Yeah. I mean, we could go a little higher than this, but. And he said, go and spy where he is. Here we are with spies again. All right. That I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. They're asking where Elisha, the prophet of the Lord, is. And so he was told he's in Dothan, Alabama, I think. Just kidding. Therefore, he sent horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed around the city. And so Elisha was staying in the city. In verse 15, it says, when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And the servant said to Elisha, alas, my master, what shall we do? And Elisha answered, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. It was just Elisha and his servant in this house. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. He's talking about his understudy, basically. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, smite this people, I pray you, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, this is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. And then to just kind of skip forward, he basically takes them to where they're supposed to go. He removes their blindness from them. The king there is like, hey, we should kill these people. And they're like, no, no, no. They came here peacefully, basically. Give them something to eat, give them something to drink, and send them off. And that's what he did. There was no fear in Elisha. Why was there no fear? Anybody, come on. Why wasn't he afraid? His faith, but it wasn't just faith. He saw the armies. He saw the chariots of fire around him. He even asked for his little scribe or his little guy who was with him for the Lord to open his eyes so he could see. And as soon as he did, he was like, wow, there's angels' armies around you, basically. And so we can understand how amazing God is in that verse because we don't get to see that typically, right? We don't have our eyes open to the spiritual realm in that capacity. We're physical people. We have spirits, yes, but God doesn't give us that sight all the time. And so it's easy for us to be afraid. And just like Elijah's little understudy saying, what shall we do? And like being afraid because they're circled around with an army. What we should do is what Elijah said, don't be afraid. For those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Right? The power of God is with us. It's more than any other thing that's going to come against us, whether it be here in this gym or you and your finances or with a health issue or whatever it is that is causing you fear. God is better, more than that. He has more power than that. So just like Elisha, the armies of heaven were with Caleb and Joshua and the Israelites. God had delivered them from Egypt. He was there. He told them, take the land. He's not going to send people there without the right equipment, without the right protection. But of course, the people are afraid because they can't see. Why can't they see? Because they don't have faith to see. But Caleb and Joshua had faith. They saw, yes, there are giant men there. Yes, there are fortified cities there. But it is so worth taking it. And God's with us. Who's going to stand against us? In Numbers 14, we read already in 23 and 24, God gives a response. He said, none of those who despise me will see the land, but my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land. Because he was not afraid, he was given access to what God had promised him. Promised all of them, right? So they were promised this land, but the people grumbled and complained and were afraid. And so God's like, nope, you're not going to see it. But because Caleb has boldness, he's not a coward, he can have it. Okay? Now, as we continue and we fast forward, the punishment to the Israelites was to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And they wandered for 40 years because those 10 spies who were cowards and who sowed division in the tribes of Israel, God did not want them to see the promised land. So he waited for every one of them to die before he sent the people into the promised land. But if we read in Joshua 14, Caleb was 85 years old. This was many decades afterwards. And what Caleb says in Joshua 14, 11, 12 says, I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. So now give me this hill country as his inheritance, basically, for doing what God had told him. So Caleb never wavered, even as he aged, even as he was in the wilderness with all the rest of the Israelites for the next 40 years. He never wavered. His faith remained, his strength remained. He waited patiently, even though he was the one who said, let's go, put me in. He waited patiently and he trusted God's promise. And when he took the land, when they finally did invade the land and took it, he was given an inheritance. So Caleb and Joshua weren't just positive thinkers, right? They're not just guys who are just like, oh, We can do it, guys. High fives. No, it wasn't about encouragement in terms of we can do this. They're men of action. They were doing what God wanted them to do. We can't just take our promised land in life by being positive thinkers. Okay? We have to take action. We have to have faith and we need to take action. We don't face physical giants. Well, maybe. You know, if you do absolute division at Pan Am's, you're probably going to face an absolute giant at some point. But we don't face giants like the Israelites had to face here. Right? What do we face? Failure, fear, rejection, temptation, unknown. We face things that we set up as these giants in front of us that we're afraid of. I don't care who you are, you're afraid of something. I'm not saying that to hope that. I'm just saying that is how humans are. We are all afraid of something. And that fear holds us back. It holds us back from God's promise over us. And that is 100% true in my case and in most of our cases here. When God has given you a word and given you a calling, what is the first thing that you're going to do? Well, maybe the second thing you're going to do. The first thing you're going to do is like, are you sure, God? You sure about that? Right? Little me. Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to question, is this right? Is this what God wants me to do? And that comes from a bit of fear, but also, we want to make sure that we're doing God's will, right? But the second thing is excuses. Well, it's just not the right time for this. God tells you to start your own business. Yeah, well, it's just the economy's not really good right now. It'd be a bad time to go into it. God doesn't care about that. He will give you what you need if he's telling you to do it. And we have this fear that God won't provide. We have a fear of failure, of rejection, fear that we don't know what the outcome will be, which is a lack of faith, right? So in our lives, in your life, are you going to be Caleb? Or are you going to be one of those guys who we're not going to remember their names? Right? Are you going to have God tell you something and then be like, you know what? I really want to go there, but it's just not worth it for me. How many people you think are like those 10 spies? I would say a huge majority. So out of 12, 10 were cowards, right? Which is 83.333%. My math right? So 84%, we'll round up even though we should round down. 84% of people, probably at least 84%, are not going to step out in faith and do what God wants them to do. Instead, they're going to be bound by fear. They're going to wish that they would back in slavery rather than in freedom. In terms of Christianity, that means people who are set free from by the Lord, set free from their addiction, set free from their lust and perversion, set free from their fear of other things, are going to go right back to it. 84%. It's probably higher than that, honestly. But that's so many people who God has a real purpose, a real calling for, that just don't want to live up to it and don't want to have the need for it. What I don't want in you guys' lives is I don't want God's response to be the same thing it was for these 10 people and for their people. I'll just make a new covenant with somebody else. I'm not calling out Thomas, but if Thomas isn't going to do it, okay, Thomas, you can't have it. I'll give it to Scott. I don't want that to happen because God's plans are good and they are powerful and they are going to give us fulfillment we can't get in other places. So when we read this, in Romans 1:17, it says, the righteous will live by faith. We need to live by faith. And what Caleb's story and this story teaches us is that we need to remember what God has done for each one of us. We need to call up the remembrance of what He has done to get us to where we are. What has He taken you from? What has He saved you from? What has He delivered you from? What amazing miracles have you witnessed? And I know that some people haven't seen miracles or haven't attributed them to miracles, but I've seen some amazing things happen. I need to remember that. We need to remember those things. God is faithful. He will do it again and again and again and again. Why? Because it isn't any work for Him. It's easy. And we need to trust Him for what He's promised us, right? The Israelites were promised that land. In an alternate reality, Caleb and Joshua roused the Israelites to say, hey, let's go into the land. They take the land. They don't have to worry about the wilderness. They don't have to worry about being stuck in the desert for 40 years. Maybe the people in that land wouldn't have caused such a horrible battle time and time and time again if they would have just stepped out in faith and not had to deal with that extra time in the wilderness. And the other thing we have to do is we have to refuse to let fear rule us, right? And we can say, oh, I'm a tough guy, I can handle this or that, but like that fear of making that first step, that can hold us all back, and we don't need to do that. We need to have, our faith needs to be stronger than our fear. And the last thing is that we need to be patient with God's timing. And a lot of us are praying for patience here today. That does not mean that the timing isn't going to be perfect. It just means in our eyes, we don't understand the timing. Right? We're looking at everything linear, A, B, C, D. God sees things from a different perspective. He sees what is coming around the bend. So He might be like, you know what? I'm not going to give you this quite yet because you need to experience this first to help you for something that's going to happen 10 years down the road. But that doesn't mean we don't step out in faith anyways. So are we going to be controlled by a spirit of fear? Or are we going to have a different spirit, like Caleb did? Like God said, but my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and followed me fully, I will bring him into the land, right? If we follow God fully, He will bring us into the land. Let us be faithful to the Lord. And just like what Elisha and his servant saw, the army of the Lord was with him. The numbers were greater on Elisha's side than on the enemy's side. So the next time God calls you to do something in faith, just do it. Just put your trust in the Lord. Don't wait for every detail to be clear, because it's never going to be completely clear all the time. There's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be things in the way. Don't wait for your fear to even subside, right? I'm sure that Caleb and Joshua had a little bit of nervousness when it comes to fighting these guys. Like, what'll happen when we fight them? Yes, God's on our side, but maybe I'll get injured, or maybe somebody will be lost in the battle. Probably somebody's going to get lost in the battle, right? But they were ready to go because the Lord told them to go, because their faith was stronger than that. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jericho, and we don't have to go to it, but as they were coming out of the wilderness and Joshua was leading the people into the promised land, they came to a city called Jericho with great walls in it. And the people of Israel, again, were like, well, how do we overcome this city? It's got giant walls and we can't, this was like Bronze Age. They didn't have the kind of weapons that could take down a city like that. But when they were there, Joshua was there in prayer, and he saw a warrior with a sword drawn. And we had talked about this months ago. And Joshua asked him, are you for us or for our adversaries? The man replied, no, I indeed come now as a captain of the host of the Lord. And the commander of heaven's armies is basically was standing in front of Joshua. He wasn't there to say, I'm going to lead your people in terms of I'm going to fight this battle with you side by side. He wasn't there to say, don't go into the land. He gave Joshua clear direction what to do. And he made Joshua do it in faith. Right? That's the only time Joshua saw him there. He didn't stay with him the whole time. In Joshua's eyes, he didn't see the commander of the hosts of the Lord chopping down the enemies. Right? He just told him what to do. We might not see all the angels that God puts around us. Okay? We might not see the host of the Lord's army in our vicinity. We might not hear the roar of the chariots running by us. Okay? But when we walk in obedience, we're not going to be alone. And like I said, God equips people for tasks. He does not hold back when it comes to what you need to do to accomplish your goals. The giants in our life might be large. It might be like insurmountable sometimes. But God, who sends us into battle, is not going to leave us alone with that. He's never lost a war. So like Caleb, we need to, bless you. Like Caleb, we need to carry a different spirit, a spirit of faith, not fear, of courage, unwavering trust, and resolve. And just like Joshua said in Numbers 13, or Caleb said in Numbers 13, we are well able to overcome it. We need to have that kind of strength to overcome it. The world needs people who are bold in their belief, not cowards. The world needs people who will face the giants that are in their path and say, you know what? Yes, that's going to be difficult, but not for the Lord. If I go on my own, I can't do this, but I go with the Lord's army. I am protected. If God delights in us, He will bring us in. That's what Joshua said. So don't shrink back. Don't settle for comfort. We step into our calling with courage, with discipline, with obedience. So the land is before you, whatever that is, whatever your goal is. Could be this nonprofit, working with these kids. Okay? That's what God has called you to do. Don't shy away. Don't back down. It could be ministering to people at a liquor store, for goodness sakes. You know? It could be putting together a ministry to help people online. Right? God is with you. God is with all of us. Okay? We are believers. We trust in Him. We follow Him. So now is the time that we rise up. Okay? Now is the time that we just like Caleb, just like Joshua, we say, you know what? We can take it. And this is something that I have been really led to share with you guys this weekend, because I think that it's a powerful message for each one of us, because even if you don't know really what God's calling is, just like Josiah was asking for his purpose, right? What's my purpose? God has a purpose for each one of us. He knows what He has plans for us. He gives us the choice to step in faith or not. But He has a purpose for each one of us. And when you see it, let's go for it. Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1 verse 9. It's time to take the land, guys. It's time to take what is in front of us, what God has prepared for us, what He has provided for us, and not have fear. You know, this thing I heard the other day is important to keep in mind. We honor God with the magnitude of our requests to Him. What does that mean? That means, as a parent, if your kid comes up to you and says, hey, can you buy me a sticker? I'm going super cheap sticker. Say one of those little coin-operated ones for 25 cents. That's an easy ask, right? It's easy. Sure. Here, quarter. Go for it. What if your child comes up and says, "Can you buy me a house?" But what we could look at it is to say this. Why does your child think you can buy him a house? They believe you can afford a house. They believe you have the ability to provide that. They honor you with the request, even if it's a pretty big ask, right? They ask something because they believe that you can provide it for them. You don't ask for things that you don't think that you'll get or that you could get. And it's the same thing with God. Like, He is capable of anything in terms of, you want to be this, God can make it happen. If that's His calling for you, He can do it. Why not ask? Why not take the steps forward? The one thing that we have to understand, though, is that just like the Israelites, there are going to be battles involved. We are going to have to get dirty and fight. We may take some cuts and slashes here and there. We might lose some people next to us. I don't mean like physical death in every situation. I'm saying people may leave you. Your friends might abandon you. Other people may say, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. So there is a cost to this. But God is capable, and He is willing, and He is able to do all this stuff if you just believe. And like I said, I am going to encourage each one of you guys, if you have a calling on your life, if you have something in your spirit that is saying, do this, and it feels astronomically big, whatever it is, just pray for it. Be that kid who asked their dad for a house. Be that person who's like, you know what, God? I want to do this and so much more for you. Just put me in, you know? Have the same kind of bravery and hopefulness and faith that Caleb had here. It's like, let's go. Get packed up. We're going now. Don't be afraid. Just like Elijah's servant, like, oh man, look at this big army coming after us. What does Elijah say? Show him, Lord. Open his eyes. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're good. And then Elijah's like, hey, let's just make them blind so we can get them out of here. So he makes all the men blind. And it's just, that's how God is. He makes things so easy at times that it's not fair to the enemy. It really isn't. And I'm glad it's not fair to the enemy. But we need to have a boldness. We need to step in faith and not be afraid. If you have fear, let it go. We only have a certain amount of time on this earth to do what God has called us to do. And we're never going to be satisfied unless we're doing what God's called us to do. That's the bottom line. You could say, you know, I really get a lot of joy for X, Y, or Z. But in your heart of hearts, in your spirit, you know if that's what God's wanting you to do or not. And if that's not what God has called you to do, you are not going to be able to sleep at night because you're just going to be focused on that calling that is on your life. So just don't be like those cowards in the Israelites who are cursed to death. Instead, be like Caleb. And guess what? When Caleb got to the land, he got his inheritance. He got what God gave him. And his family kept that land for many generations. So it's the same for us. Just step in faith.